And I'm Dahlia.
And this is Navigate the Now. Welcome.
Welcome all. This is episode number 5. Before we go on our short winter break, really wrapping up this year with maybe one of the most powerful episodes that we'll have. Today is all about Palestine, Free Palestine movement, and we have 2 incredible guests. I'm going to pitch it over to Allie, and she'll read off the bio of our first guest.
Yes. So we have today with us, we have A and Amal. Welcome. First, we're going to introduce Amal. Amal, you are an award-winning Palestinian-American illustrator, writer, and activist who has grown up in Baltimore, witnessing the parallel struggles of dispossessed communities. Amal is the co-host of Unbound, the Arts and Culture of Palestine, a radio program dedicated to uplifting and unsilencing Palestinian voices. Amal's work through portraits, illustrated stories, and her recent children's book, Noor, shines a light on the history and lived realities of occupied Palestine. Noor is dedicated to Ahmad Manasra, a child prisoner finally released in May 2025 after 10 years of imprisonment and isolation under occupation.
And we're also joined by A, whose mother is Palestinian and Syrian, who grew up in the U.S. with deep roots in Jaffa and Bethlehem. While A has long been part of Palestinian culture and community spaces around Philadelphia, the current genocide in Gaza became a turning point for their organizing. A is one of the founding members of SUNY BDS, a coalition uniting students across all 64 SUNY campuses to push for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. They're also deeply active in city-based organizing with Queens Shut It Down for Palestine, the Palestinian Youth Movement, and autonomous campaigns such as Stop Your Lies, NYT, and Demilitarize Brooklyn Navy Yard. Beyond organizing, A works as a conservation biologist, researching the ongoing ecocide in Palestine and mobilizing scientists to take action. So welcome both to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you both.
Thank you, Dahlia. Thank you, Allie.
Yes,
it's
welcome.
Great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. So let's get to it. I'm going to be completely honest with you both, and I'm almost shameful to share this, but this was the first year that I really have heard about the Palestinian struggle and the history behind it. I may have heard about it in passing in some way, but with the genocide that's been happening, obviously it's been on many of the front pages, news stories, articles, all the things, and it's gotten a lot of traction. So with that being said, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say that I may not be the first one, that this may be the first year of hearing the struggle. Could I have one of you or both of you maybe share this space, and we can start off with maybe a little bit of a history.
Well, so the brief history, Palestine was occupied by the Ottoman Empire, and then Great Britain, without any request from the people of Palestine, was simply handed over a colonial mandate by the League of Nations. The League of Nations being the predecessor to the current United Nations. And the mandate basically stated to invade and quote-unquote govern the native Arab majority of Palestine. Though the official 1920 mandate ended in 1948, much of the colonization that the Israelis employ today, these are the ugly vestiges that remain of the British mandate of Palestine, which was called Mandate Palestine. And it's precisely because Great Britain and the European nations did not want Zionist immigration. They didn't want any form of their expansion, that they all agreed that Palestine was to become the land for the settlement of Jewish immigration. So they invested very heavily in employing the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which is a 100% colonial decision to support a just cause via very unjust means. They had no intention of taking responsibility for the welfare of the Jewish people. So while Palestinian resistance, who were already fighting without any army to speak of against the mercilessly violent British who were on their land now had an entirely new form of terror thrust on and at them. The creator of the Holocaust of the Jewish people was European, and Palestinians had nothing to do with their persecution. Quite the opposite. I'll just give you brief examples where Jews would enter. They would enter Palestine, and they were given visas to enter, and they were taken in by Palestinian families. When the Nakba came, the great catastrophe of 1948, people might be out grocery shopping or working and come home and discover that their doors were locked. They could no longer re-enter their own homes because their guests had taken them over. Those quote-unquote guests are still there. These are the settlers. So from all this, the British opted to run away from the mess that they'd created. They dumped everything into the lap of the UN, and the UN was going to tell them what to do. And that's where you started this incomprehensible partition plan for 2 states. A plan that Palestine and any sane person rejected outright. In May 1948, the Nakba, the Great Catastrophe, led to the massacres and ethnic cleansing of hundreds of Palestinian villages, where the stated number you see is 750,000, but now it appears it's closer to 800,000 Palestinian Arabs were forcibly expelled by means of rape, threat, bombing, abductions, you name it. Apartheid laws then took hold, and these decided where Palestinians may or may not live, work, marry, etc., or even return anywhere close to their home. This triggered one of the main issues that you hear about today, which is the right to return of the Palestinian refugee, because you have refugees, the diaspora is all over the world. A lot of people, like from southern Gaza, ended up on the Egyptian side. They were never permitted back in. On the northern side, people ran, ended up in Jordan, and something similar happened. And so today you have a lot of Europeans who pretend to be of the land, who literally stole or destroyed nearly everything. This includes tens of thousands of books and antiquities from notable private collections and libraries. The books themselves are a really interesting story. They're sitting there in the quote-unquote Israeli National Library. They are absolutely Palestinian. They are documented as Palestinian. They're even labeled as Palestinian with the names of the Palestinian families, which not too long ago were erased. So now they just happen to be there. Maybe I'll let, I have more to say, but I'm going to let A jump in.
Yeah, and then in terms of modern day and how these things have carried through, a lot of what we are seeing right now currently in Palestine is a result of modern Israeli policies and also the Oslo Accords, which set in place a Palestinian government that had no power, and was quite works favorably with Israel and the United States. And so in the West Bank, it has been divided up into 3 areas. Only 18% of the West Bank is fully under Palestinian control. The other 2 areas, B, it's under Israeli control, Palestinians can access it, and C are like settlements that Palestinians have no access to anymore. And those are rapidly expanding. There's now hundreds of thousands of settlers who are living in the West Bank. And the cities within the West Bank are becoming more and more isolated from each other, to where it can take an entire day to travel to visit your family members who live a 15-minute drive away, to where farmers can't access their land anymore because there's a separation wall or they don't have the right permit to go to their land. And there's also, and we've seen an increase of this during the genocide in Gaza, though it's definitely been happening before, of settlers attacking Palestinians as they go to harvest the land or travel outside of the main cities. In Gaza, it used to be very similar to the West Bank, where there were settlements, and it was kind of dubious who actually had any control there. It was mostly Israel, although they could claim it was Palestinian. In 2006, in the early 2000s, Israel started to withdraw all of the settlers who lived there and bring them back to the 48 territory, which is formally recognized as Israel. And they started to impose a total siege on Gaza in 2006, so completely controlled everything that went into and out of Gaza. And were very careful in calculations of, for example, how much and what food would go in, to the point that many Gazans prior to the genocide were malnourished. And in addition, it was very hard to like reconstruct anything new because no construction material could go in. The Mediterranean Sea was sectioned off to where Gazans couldn't support themselves even by fishing. So it was already a very brutal siege prior to the genocide, even though it's become completely unimaginable at this point. In addition, there was like the splitting up and isolating of the West Bank and Gaza because the government in the West Bank is extremely unpopular. It has about a 10% approval rating right now. And in the early 2000s, the Palestinian people voted for a different government, which was Hamas. And that they were giving power in over Gaza and the Palestinian Authority and Fatah, which is like the main party in power with their geriatric president, retain control over the West Bank. And with the labeling of Hamas as an Islamic terrorist group by Israel and like international bodies, it gave further power and years of building up this idea that Gaza was just a hub for terrorists and it needed to be destroyed. So this is not something that popped up overnight. October 7th was the catalyst for Israel to say, oh, now we have reason to go in and destroy and kill all Gazans. But it was years of dehumanization that led to that point.
Appreciate you both so much giving that context and educating the listeners, myself,
Yes.
doing my part of learning more.
I think it's
sure.
worth mentioning that a lot of people will scream, "Oh, you don't have a Nelson Mandela-like figure." There are actually many, but they are in prison, and the number one figurehead being Marwan Barghouti, who actually should have been released. Instead of releasing him, he was just shunted from one prison to a worse prison in Ramle in the 48 territories, where he did appear recently on social media because he was being tormented by the finance minister, Gvir, Ben Gvir. It was pretty horrible to the point where even his own family didn't recognize him. So, they had to study the images very carefully. But he is alive, and he has survived years and years of torture, and he should be released.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning really quickly, though we didn't cover it, that there are lots of Palestinians living inside of Israel as second-class citizens who were never displaced from their homes. And there's also the area of Jerusalem where Palestinians receive no documents and are not really allowed to travel into and out of. So that leads to a lot of complications too. So it's very much been divided, which is part of a colonial tactic to, if you divide people up enough, it's easier to conquer them. And that's very much the case of Palestine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I want to say thank you for sharing as well, and also
There is more. I'm sorry. Do you
No,
want us
go
to
ahead.
provide more background or details or anything?
Well, I'm going to interject this really quick because we accidentally breezed over our community agreements, and then we would continue in any direction that you see fit. That's okay.
Right.
That's okay.
I jumped the gun on that one. Sorry, I was like, I wanted to jump in. I wanted to start talking. But the main thing, community agreements. And also, I wanted to share real quick that A and I, we know each other from other types of organizing. And so thank you for accepting to come on and, and then also introducing us to Amal. So, all right, Chris.
Yeah.
I was about to say Christine. I don't know why I was about to call you Christine. Allie. Never called
That's
you that.
okay. That's okay.
Sorry.
That's
Go ahead.
okay. And so what we do is we read through our community agreements and we ask if you agree, and then if you would like to add one, you can. And some of these agreements are more for us and as inviting you on as hosts, and you are our guests. So I'll just go ahead and run through them. The first one is that we are speaking in draft. It doesn't have to be a polished or final thought. We can always change our mind and go back. The second one is everyone is doing their best, and we remember that most people have good intentions. Three, we're not here to be right, but get it right. Four, we are present and active listening. Five is this is for us. Be mindful of our speaking space and how much time we're taking up. Our guests are please feel inclined to speak and take up as much space as you would like. That's the whole point.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we are listening to understand instead of listening to respond. This is a space to learn and grow. And this is our most recent guest. An addition is don't yuck someone's yum.
Very important.
And yeah. And then the last one is just to have fun. So is there anything you would like to add or?
A question. What does that statement
Sure.
mean?
Oh,
Don't
that
yuck
is
someone's yum.
don't
That's a
yuck
good
somebody's
question.
yum. Okay, so if somebody's like, this is really good, and then somebody else is like, yuck, that's gross. So it's kind of like saying somebody can like something, but it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to like it as well. Like, let them enjoy
Yeah.
it. That's my explanation of it. Allie,
This
feel
this
free to.
came up. It came up. I was gonna say it came up. Our last guest, her name was Jennifer De Jesus, and she works at Planned Parenthood, and she delves a lot in sexuality and different, not just reproductive rights, but just sexual health. And so I think that's where she was coming with it a bit as well. Is don't yuck someone's yum, whatever they're into, like let them be into it and no judgment. So we talked to a lot of different people, so we get some different vantage points. But yeah, if you have anything else you'd like to add, feel free. And
I think, A,
yeah,
what if we mention the Irgun just very briefly in the bombing, for example, of the King David building? My grandfather was in the building when it was bombed.
Oh, wow.
sure,
And
yeah,
it's not that people forget, I think it's been glossed over or avoided entirely in Western media, that the first internationally recognized terrorist organization was Zionist. And that person, Menachem Begin, became prime minister of the Zionist entity called Israel.
Oh, wow.
They accidentally gave themselves away because they had planned the bombing sometime earlier, and another Zionist organization, also considered a terrorist organization, the Haganah, whose leader also became a prime minister. One of them jumped the gun on the other and alerted the press of a bombing that had happened before it had actually happened, because at the last minute they changed the bombing schedule by 1 hour. So the people within the building, it was a hotel, but also these were the offices of part of the British Empire were in there, and they were getting notices all day long that there was a potential bombing threat, but nobody knew what to take seriously. My grandfather was on the first floor at the time, and he just felt like this one's for real. And when he used the stairwell to go to the second floor to start telling people, I think we'd better evacuate. It was too late. So when he was bombed, he was on the second floor. 91 people were killed, mostly Palestinian,
What year was
some
that?
British. That's 1946, so that's 2 years before there was an Israel. This was in Palestine.
yeah.
So he did survive, but he was crippled for life. But this is just how the story has played out since before 1948, before the Nakba, and actually about 10 years before that even. They've been literally raping and bombing and pillaging their way through Palestine from beginning to what we hope will be the end of Zionism.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that personal story.
Yeah. Yeah.
A mentioned something, which was the divisions that occur in Palestine, where some Palestinians have a few more rights than others. These are by no means
Yeah.
human rights. In Hebron, there's the H2 area where you are literally locked into your house. That is, they come and they put a bolt on your front door. You don't exit until they allow you to exit. So many people have to use the windows. There is an it's like a subway style, a New York subway style checkpoint at the end of many of the streets, like Shahada Street, is totally closed off to them. You can't exit your neighborhood. You might get out of your house through a window, but you still can't get to the store or school or work or a neighbor's or anything. You can't get past your street until they unlock it for you, which they often don't. And sometimes, as the children really have got to get to school, they'll start climbing like up and over the turnstile. There's a turnstile, and then there's the subway style checkpoint is sort of floor to ceiling, but it's caged, so everybody is in a series of cages, either one or
Amel,
multiple cages. Hmm.
I got so I got where what's the question am I going to ask? The locking of the door. Where is this happening? This is, you said this is like
The West, Jenin is the West Bank. Hebron is the West Bank.
and this was happening at what
No,
year
is
around
happening. No, no.
Oh,
This,
is
this
happening.
happens now. This has been happening for decades. It is
Okay,
happening
okay.
right now as we speak. Yeah. There are activists who have been documenting this for decades. The West Bank is probably the most surveilled place on planet Earth, and a lot of the experimentation, all of your by the way, we're very careful with the cameras that we buy. We do our best, or I do my best, to see if they have been tested out on Palestinians first. But a lot of what you buy from almost any space has been first tested out on Palestinians. If you have cameras in your house, video cameras, security cameras, these have already been tested out on Palestinians, primarily in the West Bank. The weapons are tested out on the Gazans who are besieged, and part of why they're locked and can't go north, south, east, or is precisely because they are probably the world's largest
Like the surveillance cameras,
unauthorized
right?
clinical
Is that
trial. Surveillance cameras, maybe portable cameras. All of this has been tested out on Palestinians.
this is like so much
So,
information trying to
so,
digest
so
right
again,
now.
in the H2, sorry, but in the H2 area, so when the children are desperate and they're trying to get to school
You
or
said the
back from school,
H2 area?
it's called Hebron 2. Hebron is divided, and Hebron's a bit different than other cities in the West Bank, where the settlers literally live on top of, in the same buildings. They put themselves on top of the residents who are on the first floor. So because they dump all their refuse on top of them, the Palestinians have to put like netting. So when you look up, you just see the trash that the settlers keep throwing at them. But again, back to the children, they often can fit through one of these turnstiles, but they can try it and move it a little bit. And then the problem is now, since the genocide started, there's all sorts of new surveillance equipment, but it's weaponized. It's weaponized. So if they don't like the movement, they can simply shoot the child. Often the child makes it sort of through, but then they haha. It's hilarious to the IOF, that's the Israeli Occupational Forces, will lock the turnstile, like unlock it, let the child start to exit, and then lock it on them. So they're stuck in the turnstile. All they can do is scream and hope that an adult comes, and sort of they have to, maneuver their way through physically. If they're small enough, they can make it. If they're a little big, they don't make it. This is every minute of every day. That's just one small part of the West Bank.
Yeah. Well, I know that we were wrapping up with the community agreements, just checking in. Was there anything, A, that you wanted to add? I know you're really good with community agreements.
No, I actually like these a lot. And I listened to a few of the podcast episodes to prepare, and they seem to work really well with the conversation and the guests. So I think that they'll work well here too.
Oh, thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you again. Thank you for sharing, Amal, that background, that history,
Well,
and the context of what's going on right now as well.
so for people slightly familiar with Palestine, this is sort of well known. But what I think A and I are still stunned about is that it's not front page news, because Western media is still doing their best to studiously ignore life for Palestinians and ignore the Palestinian voice. And then you speak and they try to silence you through all sorts of nefarious means.
Yeah.
In the case of Palestinians inside Palestine, it's like they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. People are just angry that they won't lay down a red carpet and die. I mean, that's quite literally what's happening. They're like, why won't you just die?
And Amal, you have, with this passion that you have, this connection and your family ties, you've turned this into art. I see the art behind you. I know that that's, I checked out your website. No, the one direct behind you is
Oh,
really,
that's,
yes,
yeah, Abu
yes.
Beta. Yeah.
So can you share, yeah, can you share with us how how this has like transformed you, how you're working this into your creativity, your voice for Free Palestine? How does that translate into your art?
To be honest, what I did at first was it wasn't my art, but everyone else's. Basically, I was grabbing everything I could see from Gaza and we would reproduce it. And when we would go to protests and rallies, take that to the streets. So it wasn't my work. It was, this came later. It was theirs with their names and who they were and where they were to try. And that was like one means of getting out the Palestinian voice, specifically the voices from Gaza, who are doing, we have never seen anything like this before, with very limited means. They are producing art.
Yeah.
They are journalists. They're some of the world's best journalists. There are child journalists, like if you're familiar with Lama Jamous, who's now in Egypt, but you have an 8-year-old producing documentary style work that no Western media could even attempt. They can't even come close to what this girl has done. So what the children are doing throughout Palestine, this includes the West Bank, is sometimes a parent or an aunt or uncle who are journalists are killed. The kids are picking up the press helmets and the press vests. They're gigantic on them. They're donning them, and they're doing the work. They're doing the work because you're 7, 8, 9 years old. Nobody's going to come and save you, and they know that. They know, all the children know that. It's up to them. And when they're doing that much, how can we not be their voice? All I have to do is open my mouth, and it's their voices. You don't have to even think of what to say. Repeat what they've said. So no Western media outlet has the right to say, oh, but we couldn't get in there. Who cares? You don't need to be in there. There are only hundreds of journalists who have been killed. You could have used their work. Copy and paste. It's all they had to do.
Yeah.
And so you've used their work. Now, when did you transition to your own work?
Whenever I had time. Basically, what you see behind me, these are people I was like in contact with. This is a journalist, actually. She's from the West Bank, from Jenin, Raya Arouk, and I promised her a portrait, so I'm working on it now. She's like, do it fast before they kill me. I'm like, oh. I mean, those are the conversations. This should not be normal. And they're not kidding. They're like, do it fast before I'm killed. Because, when I'm biting my nails, you see her out there and there's a bulldozer ready to scoop her away. They come right up behind the journalists and they get as close as they can. And sometimes they do. They just hit them.
How often are you in communication with her? What's her name again?
Yeah, Raya. And her last name is Orouq. I think Arouk. I think she spells with a Q. It could be a K.
And how were you initially in communication with her? How do you know her?
Through Instagram. I met her through, Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, social media.
Social media.
Basically, in the case of Palestine, right, you find one and you find 1 million. And A will tell you that. Everybody's connected. It's so easy to find out what's happening. No one has an excuse. It's they've made it as easy as they possibly could.
Right. And that's with them even being silenced as much as they are.
And that's with them being silenced. But the whole point, especially Gaza, is what they're saying is we're not going silent. If you're going to kill us, we're going to scream the whole way down.
Switching it over to A, tell us a bit about your story and your organizing work and your research that you're doing.
So I really got involved in Palestine organizing once this accelerated genocide started in Gaza. It was really my tipping point to focus my organizing on there, even though I have been organizing for other causes in the past. And I think this was the case for a lot of young Palestinians. For example, the Palestinian Youth Movement membership quintupled in October of 2023. So it really, I think, activated a lot of us who saw that Israel was beginning its final push to annihilation, and that this was really the time that we needed to act at kind of the heart of imperialism and the heart of funding for Israel here in the US. And I had I am a graduate student in the State University of New York system, so a natural place to initially start was student organizing. And SUNY has like a very rich history of student organizing, especially with the South African apartheid movement, but also back to the Vietnam War. But we have mostly been drawing from the South African anti-apartheid movement because they successfully got SUNY to divest from South African apartheid. And we have faculty and staff who were part of that movement as students who have been there to mentor us along as we push towards divestment from Israel. And it has been really helpful to have that guidance and that rich institutional knowledge carried down across the generation to a major struggle today against apartheid. And so organizing is tricky when you're trying to do it statewide. And also as students, there's very quick turnaround time for students. They're only there for a couple of years. But students have been the center of the Palestine movement for all of its history, and really developed a lot of the rich history of revolution and of resistance in the 70s and 80s. The Second Intifada and the First Intifada were very much student organized and led. And these were times of where Palestinians collectively got together to resist Israeli occupation, successfully boycotting, resisting by both violent and nonviolent means, in a very, very successful period of time for the Palestinian resistance in recent history. So a lot of this was very much student-led, and students reading about liberation across the world and bringing it home to Palestine and their own struggle. And students across the world are very much at the edge and pushing society forward, and we see that as our role too.
Students are really the backbone to a lot of movements. How did you two meet, A and Amal?
Campus, you had, I think you had a die-in, and a few of us. So I live not too far from the university, and we have a community. We have Sunday vigils, and some of the community members will go to the campus and participate in student activities if they need us for something, or we have print material, we can leave it there. We met only recently, and I'm grateful for all that A has done and is doing and will do and continue to do.
Yeah, A's doing a lot. I can say that for sure.
A is doing a lot.
A's everywhere.
The communities have been really essential. Surrounding the universities have been really essential to the Palestine movement. The most successful campuses have been the ones who have really strong community support, and we definitely have that even on Long Island. It's not in the numbers you see showing up to some of the city campuses, but there are very well-seasoned organizers on Long Island, and there are Palestinians on Long Island, and you all come out to support us whenever we need it. So it's very much appreciated, and also so necessary for maintaining a student movement, even as the students turn over every couple of years.
And keeping it moving, I'm really curious then to hear about this concept of bridging your activism with science and discussing ecocide, as we say, in form of colonial violence. And so I would love to hear you break that down, not just for me and Dahlia, but for our listeners.
Yes, so I guess the very legalistic definition of ecocide is the unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment being caused by these acts, which is a mouthful, but right now there's a push to get this formally into international law where it is not currently formally recognized as a war crime. And this really first started being talked about in the Vietnam War when the US was using Agent Orange. And but it's something that has long been a tactic of war, and in the case of Palestine, we're talking about it being used as a tactic of settler colonialism. So I think like a more apt comparison would be in the US when and and Australia and Canada and other settler colonies, we've seen how ecocide has played out over centuries. And one of the keys to colonization was to really destroy the land because that would destroy the people. For example, like in the US, how European settlers hunted all of the buffalo, and that led to starvation of indigenous people. Or just the destruction of forests on the eastern coast. So there just wasn't a land left that people were used to living on and living with and surviving on. And we see this same thing happening in Palestine today, as though we like wound the clock back to the 1600s or 1700s. Here, that's what we're seeing happening in Palestine now. I think it's hard for us. We're given this very much with like Western science and ideology that like humans and nature are these two separate things. But that's not how society has worked for most of history, and it's still not how it works for a lot of people. So Palestinians prior to being colonized were primarily agrarian. They were primarily doing subsistence farming, and they knew their land and what could be grown there and how to maintain healthy land and how to maintain healthy oceans. And part of what the Zionist movement and the current state of Israel has done is to try and sever this tie between Palestinians and their land through land and water theft and a whole bunch of rules around permits and how you can access your land and actual physical barriers to accessing your land. And both the Palestinian people have struggled from just widespread food insecurity. For example, like many of the people who were initially displaced were farmers, and then they're in a tight refugee camp without the skills to actually provide for their families anymore, and a complete reliance on international humanitarian aid, such as the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, because they can't grow their own food anymore. Yeah. So there's been that harm done to the people. Also, just culturally, there's so much around the land and around harvests and around the land was farmed like in a large family unit. Like that has been those ties, those community ties that really hold society together have been unraveled by the loss of land. And then we also see how people who aren't indigenous to the land treat the land. Israelis are European for the most part, and they treat the land as Europeans treat land, which is polluting it, not realizing its interconnectedness with humans, planting what they would like on it. So we've seen everything from like planting over Palestinian villages with invasive pines to which now cause widespread wildfires in Israel. Oh, wow. To just like the damage of all of the tons and tons of things that they've been dropping into Gaza. Just the amount of pollution there is unimaginable and unprecedented, and would take centuries to fully clean up and detoxify Gaza today. The amount of heavy metals that people in Gaza are being exposed to is just in concentrations that are just completely untested. And the effects on people and their descendants are just totally unknown at this point. So there's like, this is not how people who are connected to the land treat the land. Like, this would not happen
Yeah.
if people had that connection to the land. And so this is massive destruction of the land on purpose because it leads to ethnic cleansing and genocide.
Yeah, they're not able to feed themselves.
Yeah.
They're killing the land and then killing the people.
And I think one really amazing form of Palestinian resistance is this thought of taking. We talk about land back a lot in terms of the indigenous community here, and Palestinians taking more autonomy over their land is something we've also seen as a form of resistance. So, for example, during the Intifadas, there was, we're not going to work in Israel anymore. We're going to be completely self-sufficient, and they're going to lose their labor force. And also Israel was like pushing people out and didn't want people working there during the Intifadas. And there was this big push for people to go back to the land and start farming again. So the West Bank was starting to produce more agriculturally again, transitioning from being complete servants of Israel to being autonomous and producing their own food. And even like the symbol of the olive tree became an act of resistance because it's a tree that lives hundreds of years, and it's showing that like, this land is mine. But it was something that was not traditionally a major part of the Palestinian economy. It's something that's really evolved to be a major part of the
Oh, the
Palestinian
olives
economy.
weren't? Because I know now, like,
They
Palestinian
were
olive.
major
really
grain
popular.
producers in the past. But olives, they're easy to take care of. They don't require a lot of water. And so it's easier to produce. But then it's also showing like, this is my land. Like, this tree's been here for a while. So there's been a shift to that as a form of resistance. And even in Gaza, you have people during the ceasefire that was, and I'm sure this is happening today too, but during the one that was like in early 2024, I want to say, or no, early 2025, I'm like losing track of these pretend ceasefires. You saw people going back to northern Gaza and planting greenhouses on their rubble of their houses and growing little tomato plants, and Palestinians adapt in our resistance to stay on our land and to be able to cultivate it still.
That's what I was thinking. One of the questions I was having in my back of my mind, and you were already answering it, is the ways that Palestinian and the diaspora are showing resistance and are pushing back and are holding their own. And so you sharing that they're taking back the land as much as they can, right? And growing the tomato bushes or trees. They're not trees, not tomato, not trees. The little
Plants.
bushes.
I don't know what they are,
Vines,
to be
I don't know,
honest.
but growing the tomatoes. I mean, it just shows how resourceful and how strong Palestinian people are. Allie, I think I cut you off.
I
Go
think
ahead.
Amal was getting ready to say something.
I'm good at interrupting, but right now is the olive harvest. So in the past, what the settlers would do during olive harvest was just shoot at everyone, at the harvesters, and then they discovered, well, since they really don't know how to make anything. We're talking about destroyers, not creators. Then they realized they wanted the olive oil. So what they would do is wait until the olives were properly harvested. They have to be sifted through. When the bags were ready to go to the presses, then they would shoot. And the harvesters would run away, and then the settlers would come in armed and steal the bags of perfectly ready to go olives. Although they still didn't know what to do with them because they literally don't even know how to press olives. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
They actually didn't know what to do with them. So many of them would just go to waste, or they would just dump them or whatever. So when I helped with an olive harvest, friends said, if you see the settlers, like, don't try to protect the olives, just run. Just run. So it's absurd. But what's happening now, I mean, that was years ago. And I mean, before we met each other, the four of us came online. There are pogroms throughout the West Bank, and I mentioned Hebron. So in this area, They just, again, burned down hundreds of trees. Now, some of these trees are hundreds of years old. They're just
Yeah.
burning them. They're burning everything to the ground. They have uprooted, before the genocide, before October 2023, they had already uprooted and destroyed over 1 million trees. I don't know what the number is now. Nobody can take a tally because they can't get out there safely. But it's
Yeah.
Beyond infuriating.
Yes, and
beyond
that's not how
infuriating.
people act whose land it is. Like, you want to preserve your trees and preserve your land. It's like a
Excellent
very,
point.
yeah, it's a very European mindset. We destroy everything there and then we put there what we want to be put there. And that's not, that's not how, that's not how cultivating land works. If you want to do it successfully.
Yeah, it's
It's
like using
it's
force instead of living, you
But
know.
that's how they've operated since,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
I know people say the state of Israel. I never will, because it's not, they never declared borders, so it was never officially a state. They never declared borders so that they could do exactly what they're doing now, which is, they continually, bomb southern Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, wherever. But the idea is expansion. That's why if you look at the IOF soldiers, if you look at their badges on the below the shoulder, that shape is not the shape of Palestine. That
Yeah.
includes Egypt. It actually goes straight even Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Say that again. You were saying there was no lines that Israel,
They never drew borders.
they never drew
No,
borders, and you're saying with this idea of being able to, if there's no borders, then we can go and stretch out to wherever.
exactly.
And
Which is what they're
you were,
doing.
and then you mentioned that also Egypt is.
Egypt is part of the. So if you look at the visuals of what they consider Greater Israel, Egypt's in there. So, of course, we're fuming at all of the traitors, these Arab leaders. They're going to get it too. I mean, it's already come to some of them. It's
Yeah.
completely incomprehensible, except from the point of view of a bad business deal. A really bad, unsustainable business deal. It will unravel. It is unraveling, and that's why it's so violent.
Yeah.
This entity is coming to an end. And the reason it's more violent than most empires is because we didn't have these weapons before. We didn't have AI before to arbitrarily just kill whomever is moving.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, also includes their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
A-
the terror. Go ahead, Allie.
Sorry, that's okay. That's okay. I just wanted to ask you again because you mentioned the heavy metals, and before we get too far away, and just so people understand, I didn't know if you could potentially break that down for us a little bit of what you mean when you say these heavy metal pollutants and where that's coming from, and a little bit if you could expand upon that.
Yeah, so there's a few sources, and I mean a lot of sources. So I mean you have all of
Yeah.
the bombs and everything that Israel's dropping on Gaza. They've dropped on Gaza, like, in the first 2 months, it was the same amount that the U.S. had dropped on Iraq. And this has been
Yeah.
going on for 3 years, and Gaza is a very tiny location. So all of the metals that come from those bombs. On top of that, Gaza was primarily solar powered. Solar panels contain a lot of metals, and the bombs have completely destroyed the solar supply. So all of those metals from the solar panels are now seeping into the drinking water, into the ocean, into the ground. And then you also have buildings that have not been like here we have lots of asbestos control in our buildings, for example. There hasn't been new construction in Gaza since the siege, and there's a lot of asbestos that's been released by this bombing. And if we, like, public health researchers who've tried to study the effects of all this pollution are trying to draw parallels by looking at examples we have, such as like 9/11. And people are still suffering from asbestos poisoning for like one day during 9/11, or from cleaning up after that. This has been 3 years of exposure and more, because there's been no cleanup happening. So we have no idea what that does to the human body.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. It's just there's been attempts like pre this genocide because Israel has bombed Gaza multiple times of like comparing uh, like concentrations of different heavy metals and like hair of people near the bombing sites versus farther away versus just like outside of Gaza completely, and just like the concentrations are just it's unimaginable. And again, you don't know the damage that this is doing to the human system because we don't have a good comparison. There's very few public health studies
Yeah.
done in war zones, and there aren't really parallels. Like Amal was saying, like we have modern technology now that is being used to carry out this genocide in a way that we haven't really had before. All of this sophistication and the number of weapons that Israel is using, so we don't really have any way to even guess what the damage on people's bodies and how long it would even take to clean this out of the soil, to clean this out of the water. Yeah.
Thank you.
First, the genocide has to end. They actually have to stop dumping chemical
Yes.
weapons
There's
and
everything is
bombings
still
on.
getting dumped on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that there's been a slowing down of the bombings, but I mean people are still living with firewalls around them. I genuinely I don't know how they're doing it. I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, I asked that because I think people don't realize. I think people don't even know that bombs have heavy metals in them. Literally. I know it's that might sound that basic, but I asked you that because I feel like there's so many different ways that people don't even realize in thinking of that term ecocide, and just there's layers to that and as well. And like you mentioned, even when the infrastructure becomes deteriorated, then it becomes this, compounding issue that the average, or I don't want to say the average person, but most people might not even recognize, I should say.
They don't think about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Think
yeah.
about it.
So, yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
I know we shared a lot already. Shared a lot about the work that you do, of the history. Thank you for the history, and
Yes.
and not even just the history, but like also like what's happening right now. What is something that you would like the listeners to know that we haven't discussed? Maybe there wasn't a question that we asked to give you that opening to share. Is there something? I know that's super broad, but kind of opening
Yeah.
the floor in that way.
Hey,
Either
do you
or
wanna-
could
do you wanna
go.
start? You can start.
I was gonna say I think that it's the it's really important for us to understand in the US how complicit in this we are and how we are truly the ones committing this genocide. Because our taxes are paying for the billions of dollars that are going to send this military equipment to Israel. Israel gets 78% of its military equipment from the US. So, like, 78% of its funding.
That's
So,
crazy.
without us, there would be no genocide in Gaza. The US is just as responsible as the soldiers on the ground committing the genocide.
I'm going to say that out
And
loud one more time. 78%.
yes,
78%.
78%, yeah, yeah.
The U.S. is helping fund the genocide.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing to note is you can connect every struggle in the world back to Palestine. And this is because this is not just about states, but it's also about corporations. Like and Amal touched on this a bit with like all the security technology being tested in the West Bank and all of the military technology being tested in Gaza. This is like the new technology everyone is freaking out about, and rightfully so freaking out about the Department of Homeland Security having and ICE using was tested on Palestinians in the West Bank. And the companies that are profiting off of this genocide are profiting off of wars and genocides and mass surveillance across the globe. It's the same corporations doing all of this. You even have like the training of our police forces in the US over in Israel. Like
I didn't know
with
that. What?
Yes.
They're trained
yes.
over
Like the
Israel?
US, the NYPD has like a I don't remember which branch, but like the most militarized branch goes and trains with the Israeli occupation forces.
They've been doing that
And
for a
they're
while.
actually in Long Island opening up this big police training ground that they're going to be bringing Israeli occupation forces to train more
crazy.
with like New York police. And that's coming, I think, to Nassau County soon. So every single struggle can be linked back to Palestine. Like we are all struggling together, and when we divide our movements up and try and isolate them as like different things, that leads to us being weaker than when we realize that this is all together. And I think that's what's most frustrating about this idea of like being progressive minus Palestine. It's like you can't be progressive minus Palestine. You can't say it's okay to use all of this stuff on some people but not others.
Exactly. That's been the biggest letdown.
Can
Actually,
I ask?
Before I forget,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because A mentioned, the complicity. I don't know what the word is between complicit and perpetrator, but that's what we are. And we live here on Long Island, where we have multiple weapons manufacturers down the street from us. We even have BAE Systems. Why is it on this soil? This is a British weapons manufacturer, and they're some of the worst because they're also producing the systems for Israel and the AI for Israel, and they're working in tandem with them. But about the police, and we have ICE. ICE is simply the IOF in American format. Every means that you've seen them use against protesters or immigrants or citizens or whomever's here, these are all taught by Israel. Every act of aggression, every abduction, every form of torture.
And one of my favorite examples of, not favorite, like this is like a very negative thing, but it just really illustrates how far back this collaboration goes, is that in the early 1900s, I want to say 1909, though I don't remember the exact date, the US was trying to expand westward and colonize the western part, which still has many indigenous people in it. And Zionist settlements were trying to expand in Palestine. And a Zionist settler came to the Americas with the wheat, with Palestinian wheat, and said, I want the U.S. Department of Agriculture to fund an agricultural research station in our settlement so that we can study wheat that is easy to grow. And guess what? You can plant it out west to colonize land out there and take it away from indigenous peoples. That works great for you, and it works great for us because we can plant it over here and colonize Palestine.
Wheat comes from Palestine?
Yes, there's a wheat variety in Palestine. And so the US colonized the West with Palestinian wheat brought over by a Zionist. And the first international FDA lab was in a Zionist settlement in Palestine. So it's just like these ties go so far back in our history. This is not something that happened yesterday. And that's just another example of, again, like using the land to perpetrate genocide.
I think a lot of people will say, well, because it's not right in their backyard, that it's not impacting them or affecting them. And so what you both shared right now, it's, I hope all you listeners are ears wide open, clean them out. There's so much that we can do with pushing back and pushing back in the sense of with our tax dollars and what things that we buy and all the good.
Absolutely. I mean, they want to shut down BDS. I mean, it happened in South Africa. People understood the importance of spending or not spending or how one spends. And it's even more important now. It's a bit tricky, but if you do something like, dump your Amazon subscription, you save money immediately, but then you quickly realize you didn't need most of the stuff anyway. And
saving so much money.
No, really, we did that immediately, and any money saved goes to Gaza.
Yeah. I feel like you said a statement that really struck me, which was progressivism without Palestine is not progressivism. So I didn't know if you had any further thoughts on that, because I do think that is something we see is this, this progressive beliefs, but it doesn't include Palestine. And I know it's tricky and complicated, and maybe it is of the moment of at the heart of why things can be so messy. But I didn't know if you had any further thoughts or elaboration on why sometimes maybe people are
Yeah, I
progressive
think
without Palestine.
yeah, I would argue that they can't be. They're
Yeah,
just
right,
trying to use
right.
rhetoric to like get us to vote for them.
Yeah.
I think that in order for Palestine to be liberated, we have to dismantle the way that we have our current world order, both in terms of capitalism that like feeds into these weapons and security corporations that are just profiting off of the worst of human suffering, and in terms of how we have our state system set up with like the global north maintaining so much power over everything else and so much of the resources and wealth of the world. And for Palestine to be liberated, these things need to be dismantled. And so I think that's really, really scary for politicians and for
Yeah.
wealthier progressives who don't want to lose that level of privilege. And so it's not just about this fear of being doxxed or being harassed or getting paid by Israeli lobby groups. It's also just understanding that, like, if I support Palestine, I'm supporting having
Life.
my life as it know it, as I
Yeah.
know it in this very comfortable sphere,
Yeah.
being dismantled. And I think that's very uncomfortable for people, but also why all these struggles are so connected.
Thank you.
Palestine's just, it's the umbrella under which everything else.
Well, it's that, it's again, if no one's free unless we're all free, right? And so, it's a bit simplistic in some ways, but at the same time, it's not.
Well, we keep this in the back of your mind because we're about to ask about tools for your toolbox. But as we go into wrapping up and providing just last thoughts and a call to action, if I may, was wondering if Amal, would you be open to sharing an excerpt from your book that you'd be willing to share with us now?
Absolutely. Actually, it's primarily, Noor is primarily wordless, and it opens with a cat in the rubble of Gaza, wondering, because in Gaza, cats are a big thing. People love their cats, and horrible things have happened to their pets. And I'll just let people know, it should never be that the children are asking their cats, if I go before you, please don't eat me. This should never be normal. No child should have to ask this of their cat or anything. So this cat came into my head because there are two ways to go about being, there are many ways to go about being active, but in the case of these children's books, that they are meant for the children. And the way the publishing world works in Palestine and much of the Middle East, it's nothing like here. There's really no profit to be made. So the Tamid Institute for Education publishes. I work for them a lot of the time. I illustrate for them. And then the books are given out for free. They have teams throughout Palestine, including Gaza, where colleagues have been killed. And then these books they're just distributed. So every child has access to a lot of books. But we've lost every single library, every single book, everything. This is about the cats of Gaza wondering what on earth is going on. But then a feather appears and it transforms into a phoenix. And a phoenix is a very big deal for Gazans and people in southern Lebanon who keep getting bombed throughout decades by Israel because they have to keep rebuilding. So the phoenix is always there for them. It's always present. And this phoenix regreens Palestine. And that's what we're here to tell you, is that Palestine will be free and it will be regreened again. And what I included within the book is at the end, this single cat turns into many cats. The cats will return. The olive trees will return. The children will not return. We can't bring back the dead, but life will return. And so I'll give you just an excerpt. Free Palestine. And it's by Rashid Hussein, who I think died under mysterious circumstances in New York. He's Palestinian. He died 1977 in a strange fire. I think it was a strange fire. But in any case, with the land comes near me, drinks from me, leaves its orchards with me, to become a beautiful weapon, defending me even when I sleep. The land comes near me. In my dream, I smuggle its wild thyme. Between exiles, I sing its stones. I will even sweat blood from my veins to drink its news, so the land comes near me, leaves a stone of love with me to defend it, to defend me. And when I repay it, I will embrace it 1,000 times. I will worship it 1,000 times. I will celebrate its wedding on my forehead, on the rubble of exiles, on the ruins of prisons. I will drink from it. It will drink from me, so that the Galilee would remain beautiful. Beauty, struggle, and love, defending it, defending me. I see the land, a morning that will come, and the land will come near me.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. So, with that being said,
Oh, sorry, I was speaking on mute.
oh,
Okay, I was saying I was kicking it over to A, and I was wanted to hear what are some tools that you can share with our listeners to help support Palestinian liberation.
Yeah, I think that get involved with whatever's going on near you. There has been an abundance and proliferation of different ways to get in touch with the Palestine movement throughout the country and the world. And I think there's a lot of fear about repression. And there are so many ways to get involved that have very minimal risk. For example, like I live in Queens in New York, and there's a group called Queens Families for Palestine, and they fundraise for families at art markets. Like zero risk. But it makes so much of an impact to those families. It allows them to feed their kids. You have organizations that are more community-based and education-based and getting people linked in and in touch with organizing and how to do it, like the Palestinian Youth Movement. And you have organizations that are doing much more targeted campaigns and have a really direct impact on what is happening in what, like the sources of the genocide, the direct sources of the genocide. So for example, in New York, we have like Reject Your Lies New York Times, which targets the New York Times, which is the US paper of record, and has been manufacturing consent for the genocide in Gaza. So trying to get people to unsubscribe from the New York Times and put a lot of pressure right outside with pickets outside of the New York Times directly. There's been no arrests at this. And we have also, like, if you are in Brooklyn, there's a demilitarized Brooklyn Navy Yard, which actually has two, Easy Aerial and Cry Precision, both of which are manufacturing. Cry Precision does like military uniforms for the Israeli occupation forces. Easy Aerial does the drones that both Israel uses in its genocide, but also that ICE uses. So like they are putting pressure, like going to all of Brooklyn Navy Yard's events, being outside picketing constantly, making sure all the neighbors are aware to start putting pressure on that target. And again, it's been very few arrests, like children show up to those pickets. So like there are ways that people can get involved that I think there's this idea that like if you get involved in the Palestine movement, you're going to be arrested and have your life destroyed. And that's like not true. You're going to find so much solidarity and really learn how to organize under the toughest of oppression in this country. And so it's so fruitful, not only for being able to help people who have endured something that's completely unimaginable to us, and to really speak out from our place of extreme privilege as the people who are committing this genocide through our tax-paying dollars, but also to find and build community.
You'll also meet the nicest people ever.
I believe it. I believe it.
yeah.
We're on call for each other.
Definitely. And you'll probably get some really good food also.
Yes.
We can cook.
Amel, is there anything else that you wanted to add to the tool?
There's so much, but you're going to have to edit. So if they, here's the thing about Palestine. Every topic that we just talked about, there are a million more, and we can expand on what we've already said, And that's why when A says to get involved, that if you're an artist, a visual artist, what about attaching yourself to the visual artists in Gaza? If you're a musician, what about like Ahmed Moeen, who he taught music and guitar at the Edward Said Conservatory in the north until it was bombed. And what he's been doing every single day, wherever they get forcibly displaced, he grabs the kids and he keeps performing music. And he's been teaching throughout. He's even produced an album on Bandcamp. And what do? When the drones they will not stop. The drones are still out there 24/7. It's like having 400 leaf blowers, gasoline-operated leaf blowers in your head. So he's harmonized with them. Didn't know what else to do with them. And now people around the world have harmonized with him, and he's become very famous because of what do you do with a drone? You have to harmonize with it. So there's something for absolutely everyone, whether you're a scientist or a climate change activist or a baker. There's literally something for everyone. And everyone can help even in the slightest of ways. And we tell people don't despair. Like, okay, you can cry, you can be sad, but don't despair, because all that energy can go elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. With that's been a theme. There's been a few themes throughout the different episodes that we had on this podcast, and one of it is love, and another one is, don't despair. Use that energy you're into doing something, because you can. Any little thing helps. And go where you fit in, what speaks to you, and play off of your own strengths. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, that was kind of why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
It's like,
I think I might have caught that. But that's, a lot of people have that excuse. We're not going to look because we don't want to be depressed.
Right.
Talk about privilege.
What a privilege to say that, right? Like, I don't want to see it. I don't know, but
yeah. So I said, then don't look. Just act.
Yeah. Act.
I'll tell you.
Exactly.
You don't have to see anything. Yeah, so that's part of the trick, right? Is getting people involved, and that's what A is doing brilliantly. Is educating people, and it's hard not to. Actually, it's not that hard not to frighten them off. I think once they meet us and they realize, we speak and we eat and we sleep and we do everything everyone else does, pretty much the same way, biologically. They go, oh. But back to what we were mentioning earlier, we've also had people say, well, you're okay, but, to hell with the rest of your people. What's wrong with the genocide? So that's where, suddenly the liberal friend turns into a monster that you just didn't know about. You didn't recognize the monster until that moment.
It happens more often than...
It's okay. It doesn't even matter anymore. It's just like literally, you lose 2 people, but you've just made another 2,000 people at a protest.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Allie, was there any last words, any other questions that you have for our special guests?
I do not. I appreciate your time, and want to thank you again for sharing. And
Thank you for having us on, and for having the podcast, and for all of your great questions.
Yes, thank you so much for opening up this space. I think it is unfortunately very rare to find spaces to talk about Palestine that are going to accurately represent what we're saying. It can be really challenging to get good media representation, and so it's so important the work that you both are doing to bring this, not just this story forward, but a lot of things that get covered up or distorted by corporate media. So I really appreciate it, because making podcasts is a lot of work, I'm sure, but we really, really need more things like this out there.
yeah.
Can I just add one more thing?
Of
Ali,
course
you
can, of
mentioned
course.
something about things being complicated. And you don't know how many people, I'm sure A has experienced this 1,000 times over, but especially the first year and a half of the genocide, people would panic when you looked at them, and they'd go, no, it's too complicated. I mean, it's not complicated. There's an occupier and there's the occupied. They can understand right and wrong from that. You don't have to have the history of Palestine but you can understand the basics of right and wrong and the loss of human dignity and human rights.
Yeah.
It's actually very simple. It's very simple.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's simple. I think that's part of the reason why I was like nervous about this episode, because I want to do it justice, and I wanted to definitely create a space. So we both
did.
wanted,
You
Allie and I
did. You
both
did.
wanted
Yeah.
to make sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
You
You
did,
did.
definitely.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Dolly has been much more openly vulnerable while we're recording, but I resound, or yes, I don't know if resound's the right word I'm looking for, but I am on the same page. I wanted to do this justice as well, and give you guys the space and
Thank you.
that right. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it's been really beautiful to see how people have connected with our history these last few years and really related it to their own struggles and their own things that they've been involved in, and educated themselves. And I think it's just been really beautiful to see people around me interact with these things that are so entrenched in every person who is Palestinian, and create our movement that we have today. So
Yeah.
No one is excluded from this movement.
exactly.
Unless you're a nasty SOB, then no, we don't want you. But otherwise, otherwise, come on in. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to, I want to mention that I'd like to share, get some different links to some of the things you mentioned specifically, Amal, and even you, A, if there's anything we can talk afterwards, and just to let our listeners know that some of these things that we discussed will be posting in the episode.
So, once again, I know we've said it over and over, but I can't thank you both enough for your vulnerability, for your courage, for all the work that you're doing, for educating myself and many other of our listeners. It's been very powerful. And I want to wrap up by saying today's stories remind us that Palestine is not just a place, it's a living resistance, a call for justice, and a mirror of our shared humanity. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Free Palestine.
Free
From the
Palestine.
river to the sea, free Palestine.